have some good news and some bad news. The bad news is that the projector is not working, or something's not working, right? That's the bad news. The good news, and I guess this is good news, and I guess it depends on your perspective. The good news is this should be, most likely, be the final night of Your Money and You. So I don't know if that's good or not. I'm one that when I do a series, and this is the 15th part of this series, by the way, so we've been at this for a while. So I'm the type of person when I'm a few months into something, it's good to get to the end. I'm ready to move on to something else. Personally, that's the way I am. But not that it's a bad thing to have a long series. I'm not opposed to long series, and I do them myself. But I do like thinking about, all right, what comes next, and all those those types of things. So I like getting something fresh going on. But anyway, we're here because we're here. I mean, we made it to the end. We're at the end because we're at the end. And I said to my wife, I said, well, I hope I didn't forget anything that I really wanted to include. But I will say that after tonight's message or session, whatever you want to call this, that if there's any questions, anything about either tonight or maybe something prior, you're certainly welcome to speak up. Being most likely the final night, unless something happens where it just takes longer than I anticipate. So let's go to the Lord in prayer tonight and ask Him to speak to us. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time we have to finish up this series and all that we've learned from your Word and hopefully been applying to our lives. And I pray that you would help now tonight as we attempt to finish it. And I pray especially as there'll be no PowerPoint to give a visual reference. I pray that you would just grant us clarity of mind and receive what you want us to receive and apply what you want us to apply. In Jesus' name, amen. So we are on part 4. It is part 15. But as far as the actual content, we're on part 4, which is the action part of things. What is the everyday living that we we should put into practice? And the whole purpose is, there are all kinds of different financial experts and people who can give the nitty-gritty of advice, and they have call-in shows and all that kind of stuff, and all that's well and good. So I'm not trying to replicate that because it's just different setting, and just the situation's different. But the hope is to at least be specific enough in some areas that it would be helpful for maybe some who don't know or need some reminders, haven't learned, and maybe some younger ones that maybe this would be helpful to that need to learn some things as well. And so there are other resources out there that more specific questions can be answered. And I'm no financial guru, financial advisor, but at the same time, the goal has been to be a help because if anybody. No topic should be unaddressed, or at least should be off limits for being brought up in churches. And of all topics, finances, the Bible speaks a lot about money and finances. And so the goal is then to be a help and that we can bring glory to God through how we manage our finances. So this is Your Money and You. It's the end of part 4 of action, or at least presumably the end of part 4, action. How do we then put things into practice? Now, we went from purpose, why is it important to learn and about finances and put things into practice to manage our finances well. Why is that important? There's also the character, our character. And we spent most of our time on the first 2. And that was in a lot of ways on purpose, because it really gets to the heart of things, is who we are as people is going to affect the most how we manage our finances. But there also is then things we need to learn. Part 3 was education, and then tonight is, last week we started with action, and tonight will be part 4, action as well. And I'm just going to review a couple of things from last week, just the last 2 or 3 slides, which unfortunately you can't see, but it is what it is. Proverbs 22:17 says that the borrower is servant to the lender. Rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Romans 13, 7 and 8 talks about rendering, the things that need to be rendered, tribute to whom tribute, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear. And it says, owe no man anything, but by love serve one another. Getting out and staying out of debt should be a high priority. Let me just tell you, maybe I was going to save this statement for later, but I'll just say it right now. As life's a whole lot more fun. It's a whole lot more fun to do stuff with your money when you're not paying off debts. It's a whole lot more fun, because I've been there for both. And let me tell you, which would I rather do? Would I rather just pay a debt, like whether it's a credit card debt or a loan, or pay that bill every month, or would I rather put into savings, or would I rather save it for something I'm thinking about down the road? I might need to save some money for a new projector or computer. Maybe it's just the cable. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll try the cable first. That's cheaper. But anyway, might need a new computer. No, it's not the computer. It's either a projector or the projector cable is what it might be. But anyways, saving money for something that you're really interested in buying, or maybe it's you get to invest some more, and so that's a whole lot more fun. Or maybe you save up money and you take a vacation. That's a whole lot more fun than paying the debts. A whole lot more. It's a whole lot more enjoyable. But getting out and staying out of debt should be a high priority. But the biggest reason it should be a high priority is that God does not want us serving the lender. He wants us to just be serving Him with our whole hearts and not be serving the lenders. And we talked about the Psalm 37:21 says, "The wicked borroweth and payeth not again." The principle there, we need to pay what we owe. We need to pay our bills. If we have debts, we should not take the philosophy of the world and try to get out of debt somehow, or get out of paying our debts somehow by these different ways that there are. We need to just pay what we owe, what we rightfully owe, and make good on it. Proverbs 22, 26, and 20. Actually, Ecclesiastes 5, 4, and 5 teaches us not to make a promise to pay something unless you know you can follow through, and that particularly has to do with our vows to God. But we should be careful about what we promise to do. Proverbs 22, 26, and 27 teaches us not to put ourselves on the hook for the debts of other people, or being surety for debts. The Bible cautions greatly against that. Getting behind knocks over a domino that sets off a chain reaction that leads to desperation, and desperate people do desperate things. And I mean, very desperate things once they get desperate. But it starts with that first domino being knocked over, and then chain reaction takes off. So our goal should be, let's try to catch things early. Let's try to make the right decisions early so it doesn't turn into something bigger. Paying off debt, on the other hand, begins a good downhill snowball that leads to financial freedom. I don't know why it's doing this. I didn't mean to cover those slides. I had them hidden on purpose. I'm having a bad experience with technology today, apparently. I wondered why. I thought, boy, this is more slides than I wanted to cover, but it's going through the slides I had hidden. It's supposed to jump to the one I don't have hidden. Anyway, well, here we are. Debt steals from the future to pay for the present. And I'll skip that one. Okay, now this is where I actually wanted to start. 3 options to get your financial house in order. Let's say you have debts, or you just have a hard time paying your bills. There are 3 options. One is you got to increase your income somehow. Number 2, you got to decrease your spending somehow. Or number 3, you got to have a combination of both. And oftentimes there are things that can be done both ways, or need to be done both ways, because as we talked about last week, a lot of our bills, our biggest bills, are very fixed expenses that we really can't. It's hard to decrease enough that it's going to make a huge difference. Now, every little thing adds up, so if we can decrease spending, we should. But if you got a mortgage, or you rent an apartment, or maybe you own your house outright and you still got to pay taxes every year, and those usually don't go down. And I don't think there's a way to reduce them unless you tear your house down. Then it might reduce your taxes. Just live in a tent. So. But no, you need a place to live, so you got to pay pay your rent to the town for the privilege of living on your own property. But a lot of those are, utilities don't really change much as far as going down. There's not much you can do to cut that unless there's some big area that, let's say somebody's got a furnace from, where I went to Bible college, it was an old building. I mean, it used to be a mental institution, and some may have argued it remained a mental institution. No, it used to be a county, I think it was a county home for the mentally handicapped and the mentally ill. And so so it turned into, they use it for the Bible college building or the dorms, and they had also a home for troubled teens there in that building at the time. But it was very energy inefficient. I mean, it was just, I went in there and I had a room all the way at the end of the one wing, at the one hallway, and it was, I think it was hot water heat where it just runs through the pipes through and then just radiates. And it was all the way down at the end, and it was that particular room for some reason was a tile floor, and it was freezing. And Iowa winters get pretty cold. And that particular winter was really cold. And it was not good. But eventually, apparently over the years, they've made some upgrades, but they had a 60-something boiler that gave way. So they had to resort to the 1940-something backup boiler. And during one of the coldest winters, they had, I think, between I don't know if this was all their buildings or just the one building, they had an electric bill of like $12,000 or something. I mean, it was just astronomical. So they were praying for a new boiler. And they actually got one. The Lord just provided in an amazing way. There was he didn't say who it was. I think I know who it was, pretty sure. A businessman ended up, I believe, gave most of the money, donated most of the money for a boiler. But they were praying for that, and the Lord answered prayer. And so in some ways, and I say that to say, sometimes there are big things that can be done to reduce expense. That's a pretty drastic reduction as far as when you get a more efficient heating system. So sometimes there are those needs. But as far as if you have the heating system you need to have, and there's nothing outstanding like that, it's hard to really reduce those types of things in a drastic way. So oftentimes we need to increase income, but we can try to do a combination of both. Some tips that we, once again, reviewing from last week for decreasing debt is to not take on any new debt. That should be first and foremost. Just stop yourself from taking on new debt. Now that sounds like, well, of course, why wouldn't you do that? For some people that'd be really hard, because once you get into debt, well, what's a little more? What does it really matter? I'll just add to it a little more. And oftentimes, if people are already in debt and they keep remaining in debt, it's because there are already some spiritual or character issues where they just continually are not making the right decisions to stay in that pattern. And just using, for example, like consumer debt, credit card debt, that type of thing. Pay all the minimums first. Make sure your minimum requirements are met as far as the bills you need to pay each month. And then when you do extra, and hopefully, and this is the thing about increasing your income, is you shouldn't be satisfied with an income that just allows you to get by with your minimum bills. That just doesn't cut it, because what if you have an emergency, or what if you have extra expenses at the dentist or something? I mean, what if you have, or car repairs? I mean, the car repairs are going to come up at some point. It's hard to just, it's tough to just get by on the minimums, and so somehow there needs to be an increase in the income so that you can then pay extra on those debts. Pay on the smallest one first, or if there's another one that has a high interest rate, try to focus on that one so you're not spending as much money on interest. And then evaluate every expense, sacrifice luxuries, just review. Now, I wish I had the PowerPoint for this, but so this is starting fresh tonight. One of the things I did want to give some instruction or information on is about credit reports and credit scores. Because from what it sounds like, there are a lot of people that don't really know how their credit score works, how credit reports work. And let me tell you, there's a difference between having no credit and having bad credit. If you have no credit to your name, that's not necessarily that's not nothing against a person who has no credit. That just means I don't need to have any credit. But if somebody has bad credit because they've made bad financial decisions, that's a whole other matter. And so the steps need to be taken to then make that better. Why? What, so you can get loans? No, because it's a measure of how you manage your money. Oftentimes, it's not the only measure. It's maybe a partial measure of how you manage your money. Do you pay your bills? How much do you carry over on your credit cards? And how much of your what percentage of your credit cards are you using? So, to me, I look at credit score as not thinking, oh, I'm going to get this loan soon, so I need to have a really good credit score. I look at the credit score saying, all right, good. That means I don't have much money on credit cards or loans. The bills are paid and all those types of things. So to me, it's a good testimony to have a high credit score, at least a fairly decent, good credit score. I just look at it as a good testimony because if someone has a bad credit score, well, maybe there are various reasons why they might have a bad credit score. But and by the way, if any of this applies to you, this isn't necessarily against you. This is meant to help anybody who needs it. And so I'm going to give you the factors that influence your credit score, from which ones are most important factors, they carry the most weight, have the most impact, and then which ones do not. And then take this, and if there's anybody here who needs to apply some of this, then basically you look at the opposite as having a bad impact. So or I should say, you do these things, put some things into practice to help improve your credit score. Let's say you already have a bad credit score. So the very high, the most important thing that affects a credit score, the biggest factor, do we have any guesses? On this particular one, I'm going to put you to the test. See if anybody, see what kind of crowd we have here tonight. What would be the most important factor for your credit score? Russ?
Is paying things on time.
You got it. You got it. I don't have any candy. I'd give you a piece of candy. No. Paying things on time. On-time payments, above all else, has the biggest impact on someone's credit. I mean, hands down. Hands down, hands down. You can do everything else right, and if you make late payments, you're gonna hurt your credit score in a big way. Just pay them on time. I mean, and even if you don't have any money to hardly scrape together, pay the minimum on time. If you have no other money, don't not pay the bill. Don't leave that bill unpaid. Pay that bill on time. On-time payments, very high impact. And I'm getting this information as far as the level of impact from a credit card I have. You can actually check your credit score. It's not like there are different ways that the credit score is tabulated, different companies, but they're all fairly in the same range. You can check your credit and all that, and that's what a lot of credit card companies are doing now, is actually providing that right on their website, which they didn't used to do with your account. But I'm giving you what they said. This was from a credit card company website that gives this impact. On-time payments, very high impact. Another one that has a high impact, maybe someone name something else, if you can think of something else that would have an impact. Josiah?
Not having very many debts, if any at all.
Okay.
And paying your debts on time.
Yeah. The on-time payments is the first one. But yes, the level of credit, the total balances you have do have an impact. Now, the total balances is said to have a moderate impact. What has a bigger impact than the actual number is the percentage of credit that you're using. That has a high impact. So your total balances, you could have $10,000 in credit card debt, or let's say $5,000. Let's say $5,000 in credit card debt, but you could have a credit card, you could have a total credit lines of $20,000 in credit cards. That's 25%. which still falls in that percentage range of you still have a lot of credit available. So the total balances has a moderate impact. The available credit, the total number of available credit you have has a low impact. But your credit usage, the percentage, has a high impact. And once you get over 30%, that has a negative impact on your score. Once you get under 30%, it has a more drastic effect in a positive way. And then then it doesn't change much until you get under 10%. And then once you get under 10% of your credit limit usage, then that has a really good impact on your credit score. So keeping that as low as possible compared to, no matter what your credit limit is, you keep the amount of credit you're using low, that has a great impact on your score. The other thing that has a high impact is the age of your accounts. Particularly it's the oldest. Some I think go by average age, but I've also seen what's the oldest account you have. And mine came up as I think 12 years and 10 months or something like that. I got, which is okay, but for credit standard, for credit score standard, it's okay. It's not great, but it's not bad either. So that's why you want to be careful about taking out too many new credit cards and particularly credit cards, because then you're reducing your average age. Unless they go by the oldest one that you have, then in that case it doesn't matter as much. But I've heard it both ways, both average and then the oldest account. And then another thing that has a low. I'm going out of order. I had some notes here. Now I'm not even looking at my notes. So for age, don't cancel your oldest credit card. I already mentioned using above 30% of your available credit increases the negative impact. Inquiries, the hard credit inquiries. Now, this isn't like when your insurance company does a soft pull on your credit. When you're getting auto insurance or something, they sometimes do a soft pull, or there's different places that might do a soft pull. That doesn't have to do with getting a loan. That doesn't count against your credit score. But for getting a loan, an actual hard credit inquiry, like you're applying for a loan, they measure it with 2-year time frames. They're 24-month time frames. That 0 is great, 0 new inquiries, and 1 to 2 is still good within 2 years. But once you get up over 2, you get 3, 4, 5, and 6 is really bad within 2 years. You basically don't need to have applied for 6 different loans within 2 years, most likely. Now, if someone is getting a car and they're looking for a car loan, if they do multiple inquiries within a short period of time, some of it depends on the financial institution or the credit bureau, but let's say you do it within a couple of weeks and you're just looking for the best interest rate or whatever it might be, those multiple inquiries don't typically count against as more than one. I know that at the credit union, I think it's if they reapply within there's a certain period of time, if it's 30 days or whatever it is, it only gets reported as one application, one inquiry, and so there are things like that are exceptions. But so that's why, and what happens is if somebody has bad credit, they are people who need the money. Oftentimes, the people who need the money the most already have bad credit. Well, then they're looking for a loan, and so then they go to these different places and apply for loans, so they're going to hurt their credit even more because they keep applying for these loans at different places. So once again, it's a cycle. It's a domino effect that one thing leads to another, and usually it's people who need the money the most that are in the least good position to get it. And that's why we should look to make wise decisions to avoid that. The total balances, and Josiah mentioned total balances, is especially important regarding your debt-to-income ratio. So that's another big factor when getting loans. Although if you don't get loans, don't have an interest in getting loans, then it doesn't matter. Other than you don't want to have a high debt-to-income ratio anyway, because that means you have a lot of debts. So even if you're not going to get a loan, you still want to get that down. But places will take into consideration your debt to income ratio to see if you actually can pay the bill, if you have enough money. The available credit has a low impact, but this matters most when you are using more of your credit. If you only have $5,000, if you have one credit card that does $5,000 line compared to, say, 3 credit cards with $15,000, and you're using $1,000, obviously your available credit's much lower with just the one card. So next we have here, oh, I know what's going on. I know why it went to the next one. It's my own fault. I'm not having a good time with the computers today. I know why. Now I know why again. I'm messing up again. It's different because it's not plugged into the projector. It looks different. So this is just not good. All right, we'll keep moving here. It's all coming into focus now. All right. Everyday living. How do we successfully manage our money in everyday living? First of all, we need to have increased adaptability. We need to be adaptable. There are people who get set in their ways, and when they get set in their ways, it means they're unwilling to change, and there might be good changes that they need to make, but they're unwilling to because they just get kind of in a rut or get in that groove. Well, this is the way I've always done it, so I'm not going to make any changes. And I'm not one who's advocating being for just, let's just always change, let's always be looking for changes. But we need to be adaptable, that when the situation, when the circumstances change, or when something in the economy changes, or in something in our own lifestyle changes, we need to be adaptable and adjust to whatever those changes might be, or look for some good changes that might help us in our finances. Not being willing to change can be expensive. Adaptability requires knowing the state of your finances. I'll use one example. There are some people who still need a landline phone. There are some people who still need a landline phone. Because of where you live, maybe the cell reception in your area, there are people who need that, and it's a practical thing, and you need to spend the money on a landline phone. You know, there are a lot of people who just rely on their cell phones only for their primary phone service now. And if they have reception, particularly here in Greenfield, unless you've got, there's not all the companies are the same as far as the level of coverage, but generally in Greenfield, you're not going to have trouble with cell phone coverage for the most part. Unless you're in a building, one of the companies, when you go back here in the back of the building, you don't get much of anything. But a couple of them you do. So you have choices. So in Greenfield, you're not going to have a problem. A person's not going to have a problem using their cell phone. But let's just use, for example, an inability to change. Let's say somebody kept their landline, not because they had a practical need for it, but just because they've always had a landline. They've always had a landline. But yet they're continually paying for that landline phone. But they don't have a need to pay for that landline phone because they already have a cell phone. Now, some people might not have a cell phone, and so they choose to have a landline. Fine. That's each person and household can make their own decisions. But there are some people, they have landlines just because, I got to have a landline. My family and I, we have no practical purpose for a landline phone. Because even if we had a landline phone, I would still have a cell phone. My wife would still have. Now, between the two of us, my wife would probably get more use out of a landline phone than I would. But the fact is, we'd be paying more for a landline phone. We could do some, but I also like her being able to have a cell phone when she does need it, and we don't pay a lot of money for her cell phone plan. And we don't really pay a ton for mine either, but we don't have practical purpose for a landline phone. But that's where adaptability comes in, is that being willing to rethink some things that might help me save money. That might help me. Maybe I just need to reevaluate what do I really need and what do I don't need, and that can help. To really have a grasp on our finances, we need to know how much we have coming in. We need to list our income, and it is sources and amounts. Now, for some of you that are very detailed, that might involve putting it down on a sheet of paper, having very detailed records. For some of you, It might be, let me get my calculator out and let me just do it in my head because I already know generally what I take in every month or every, from different sources. So I'm going to just punch out some numbers and I do the math that way. Whatever way works best for you, just know what you're bringing in and also then know what you're spending money on. And there are different ways to track this. Some people track it very detailed. But especially now the recurring bills, a lot of us probably, at least I hope you have a grasp on your recurring bills, your utility bills, your phone bill, your whatever monthly bills that you have that are typical bills, the rent, the mortgage, whatever it might be. Those, it's not hard to really keep in our minds, but you ever think of, add them up and what does that actually come up to every month? Or what about my discretionary spending? That might be overlooked. What am I spending at the grocery store? What am I spending at the other stores where I get some other, my just regular household goods? There are different tools available, either pen and paper or technology, like you could do a spreadsheet on the computer, or I think there's even apps to use that you can track all of your expenses, and so the different ways in which to do that. But part of reducing spending actually involves being aware of knowing what you're spending money on. You got to actually know what you're spending money on, and sometimes when you really think about it, put it together, wait a minute, I'm spending money on that? Now think about this. Think about all the people who go to Dunkin' Donuts every day, or who go to McDonald's every day, or go get their breakfast, and they just habitually do that. Or maybe they go to the convenience store, Cumberland Farms maybe, or whatever it might be. Think about the people who do that and how much money, or some people, if they have a Starbucks around, they're spending $3 or $4 on, Starbucks. So think about how much money people spend, and they just are habitually spending that money. Now, some people have the means to do that, and if that's the way they choose to spend their money, that's their decision. But there are a lot of people that they got bills to pay, they got debts to pay, where they could be taking some of that money and putting it to getting rid of some debts, getting rid of some bills. And there are a lot of people there who just think about eating out, and it's like it's what they do. It's just not even giving it a thought. Oh yeah, let's go out to eat instead of finding cheaper ways. Now up until this past week, or up until actually starting this week, I only had to take one lunch along to work. And I'll tell you, I'll just be honest with you, what I've been eating for years. Okay, this is literally years. A deli meat and cheese sandwich, usually honey ham, and white cheddar, or sharp cheddar, I should say, sharp cheddar cheese. Okay, that's usually, or provolone or Munster or something. But lately I like the cheddar. But anyway, eat it. Take a sandwich along. A salty snack, like tortillas is usually tortilla chips or veggie straws, or in the past I've also done pretzels, and a couple of cookies. It could be Oreos, it could be the cheaper fudge stripe cookies that I get from the grocery store, where we go, that you can save a lot of money on fudge stripe cookies there, and that's what I take, and then I drink water. I've done something similar to that for years. Whether I was working 4 days a week, 5 days a week, or just one full day a week. And actually, at times when I go into work at 12 or 12:45, the way the schedule's been, and I eat my lunch before I go to work, I just eat that. Say, boy, you're stuck in your way. I don't know. That's just what I do. Why? Because, I don't need to go out. I don't need to go out to eat. I don't need to order something. And maybe if I were in a position, if I'm having to take a lunch every single day or almost every day, then maybe every 2 weeks or once a month, there'd be no harm in going and ordering something special. Nothing wrong with that. But let me tell you how much money I'm not spending by taking my own lunch. Think of how much money you're saving by taking your own lunch. Nothing wrong with a special treat, nothing wrong with going out to eat at different times. But there are times people go way overboard on the money they're spending at restaurants. It's a big money sinkhole. And one person's, actually, it was Dave Ramsey who said this. I agreed with him. He said, a lot of that money you're spending, when people go out to eat, there's about, I forget the percentage, it was 60, 70, maybe 80% of your bill is entertainment. Because it's you're not paying for you're going for the experience, you're going for the atmosphere, you're going for the socialization, you're not paying all that money for food. And I realize, I'm not against restaurants, I'm not against people making a living having restaurants, nothing wrong with that at all. I'm just saying for for the Christian who wants to manage their money properly, the restaurants, the eating out is one of those areas where there's a lot of money that goes out the window due to through that. And everybody, you'd have to just evaluate your own situation on what's best for you, but it's something to at least be aware of, and that goes into my next point here of not just listing expenses, but evaluate what is most important. Maybe there's a person who they sacrifice in a different area, so they do have the money, and it is important for them to eat out a couple days a week, or every Friday night they go to eat out. Someone I work with goes. I guess she and her husband, they every Friday night or whatever day of the week it is, they each choose a different restaurant. One of them chooses a restaurant, and next week the other one chooses a restaurant, and that's their date night. That's what they do. Hey, that's their priority. That's important to them. Fine. But we evaluate what's most important. If you sacrifice in one area so that you can have, there's something that's important to you in a different area. We all have different things that are important to us. Maybe somebody's just got to have that particular brand of you fill in the blank because that's what you like the best, and you're going to spend a little more money on that particular thing. Nothing wrong with that. But it's overall, what is our pattern and our habits? What do we do typically that makes the most important? So evaluate what is important. And then recognize, okay, I'm spending money on this. This isn't that important. Or maybe I need to shift some priorities here or recognize maybe this isn't as much of a priority as I thought it was. And then also evaluate what is most important, not just based on the money aspect. Also evaluate what is best based on your Christian life and home. So some things we have to evaluate not just on the financial end of it, but evaluate, is this expenditure, will this be good or bad, help or hindrance for my life, and is this good for our home? There's times where it's necessary to spend some money that's good for your own Christian life and your home. And then there's times where there are things that you could spend money on, but you realize, no, this wouldn't actually be good for my home. I could afford this, but this is not what I should have, and it's not good for my own Christian life, and so I'm not going to do this. And then prioritize paying loans. Paying loans frees money up for giving, investing, saving, and future spending. Interest is an unproductive expense. Interest is an unproductive expense. All you're doing is adding to the income and profits of whoever loaned you the money. It's unproductive for you. It's productive for them, but it's unproductive for you. And so that's what we should be prioritizing, so we're paying less and less interest. Making some smart choices in our everyday life. Shop, buy, and these are just basic tips. Some of you already know this. You don't need me to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway for those who don't, or maybe need a reminder. Make smart choices. Shop by unit price. Shop buying in bulk if it makes sense for you to buy something in bulk. Don't buy a 50-pound bag of flour if you never use flour or hardly ever use flour. But when we have the opportunity, we can get a better deal. There's a little store in central Pennsylvania that sells foods in bulk, and we can get a really good deal on 50-pound bags of oats. And we use oats quite a bit, so it's worth it for us to get 50-pound bags of oats. There's another place I could actually order it from, but then you got to pay for the shipping, and the shipping went up, so I'm not as inclined to do that. Or we've bought 50-pound bags of Sucanat before for sweetening things, and that's not the cheapest type of sweetener either, and so getting it in that bulk really helps. So, but it might not make sense for you to buy as many things in bulk. I think of Jim Sund, Lord bless him. He didn't buy toilet paper in bulk, but it looked like he bought toilet paper in bulk. Did he need all that toilet paper? Well, he didn't need all that toilet paper at once, but that was a source of a lot of good laughs, in regard to his toilet paper. And the need to go buy some when there was already, in the evening I heard a couple stories where he needed a trip to the store or asked someone to go buy him toilet paper, but then they walked in and he's got these stacks of toilet paper already. So apparently toilet paper is a high priority to him and to Margie. So, but they were ahead of their time. Who knew that 2020 was going to bring what it brought? I mean, he would have already been set. If he was at home, if he was living and he was in his apartment, he'd already been set for toilet paper. He would have been in good shape. What an interesting thing. Make purchases thoughtfully. Don't get caught up in a sales pitch or don't make decisions just because that's the way. You just don't get caught up in the conventional wisdom or things, well, it's always done this way, or this is the way I've been taught. Well, just because it's the way you've been taught doesn't mean it was right. Maybe it was right, so take those things that were good. Don't get caught in the easy money trap. Remember that borrowing today steals money from the future. As a matter of fact, I saw an advertisement online today that was for pianos, and how they were having a special deal where you could buy a piano and get 0% interest for 24 months. If you paid it off in 24 months, you'd get 0% interest. And yes, pianos were expensive. I went on this site, and I went on one of the dealers' sites, and I was trying to find how much these pianos cost, and wouldn't you know, I couldn't find a price anywhere on the sites. Probably because you don't want to know what the price is. So that's why they're offering 0%. Don't fall for stuff like that. Save, save, save. Should be in a position where we should be financially in a position where we can save some money. And or if you don't have money to buy a full-fledged piano, you can get digital pianos that are similar to the feel of a regular piano, or find a used piano. There are different churches they've offered in times past of offering an organ or offering a piano here, and I've said, well, it's really not practical for us because the greater volume for the apartment above, and I don't want to do anything that's going to disturb people above with the higher volume. So as I just said, we're not in a position for that. But there are times where things are given away, or you get things for cheaper, get them used. But borrowing today steals money from the future. So just make purchases thoughtfully. Don't make impulsive decisions. When it comes to credit cards, don't ever get a credit card unless you're like this worldwide traveler. You're working for a corporation, you just travel on business all the time, and if you did, you'd probably have a business credit card from them anyway. But unless you have a reason to, you don't need a credit card with an annual fee. Some secured credit cards, when people are building or rebuilding credit, have an annual fee. Some of them do, in that case, it's not always a bad thing, but it's still better to look for one that doesn't have an annual fee. Use it, but always pay it in full each month, and that's important also for your credit, because if you're trying to rebuild credit or establish credit, it's actually better to have a credit card and use it even $10 a month than to have it sitting there not being used, and that's better for your credit. Take advantages of rewards, but don't get so focused on rewards that you get stuck. You get a little over your head with the credit card bill, because they bait you in with the rewards, but then you end up paying interest, and that easily wipes out any of those rewards. I mean, multiplied times wipes out the rewards. Auto purchases, decide the total amount you can afford, not how much you can afford each month, because it's very easy when people go for an auto loan, it's very easy to stretch those payments out for longer so you can get the monthly payment down to where you want it, but you end up paying more for a vehicle. Focus on what the total amount is you want to pay for a vehicle, and really the ideal thing is you save some money and are able to buy a vehicle in cash. Auto insurance, and this is really any insurance, but particularly auto insurance, shop around. And this is where people get stuck. They say, well, I've been with this company for 20 years. They would never, ever do me wrong as far as price. I'm sure they're offering me the best price. Now, I don't want to say this as an absolute guarantee. Most people, if you've been with a company, the same company for 10 or 20 years, there's a good chance you might be overpaying for your insurance. Okay? I'm not saying for sure, depending what company you're with, but when it comes to auto insurance, I have no hesitation to shop around. No hesitation. I have no allegiance to one particular company. Now, because I do some rideshare driving, I still have to maintain some rideshare insurance. Not every company offers that, so I am a little more limited in what I can do. But regardless, though, say if that wasn't an issue, I just shop around, and the best deals are through independent agents or just going right to the company directly on their website or call the number or whatever it is. You go right to the company, and that even often is cheaper. We lived in Michigan. We started, and I was just doing what my parents had done. They went to this company they had been with for years, and they have different policies with them, so they're probably getting the best deal they can, most likely, with the different policies, and who knows? I don't know the situation. But I was just thinking, well, we're going to go to this company because this is what my parents did. We go in there, and wasn't a big fan of the agent himself, but these captive agents, they're called captive agents because they sell only one company's insurance. You're going to pay more that way in most cases. I'm not going to say in every case, but most cases you're going to do that. When you go to an independent agent, they shop around to different companies for you and give you the best deal that they can find. But anyway, I went to an independent agent, and I got with a company that also sells policies directly to the consumer. And so I went with the independent agent, saved money from the captive agent, but then I decided I'm going to shop again. I'm going directly on the website to this company, same company I was getting from the independent agent, and I saved even more money that way. So guess what? That's what I did. Now, I love trying to support local businesses, local agents. I'm for that, and if that's one of your priorities and you want to make sure you do that, fine. And I've done that around here as well. But my main priority, when it comes to insurance, the main priority is getting the most bang for your buck. That is the priority for insurance. And you want to certainly make sure you're with a reputable company, because not all insurance companies are the same. For young drivers, get a beater car. Get something that's they don't need some fancy just starting out. A younger driver just needs just a basic average car. My first car was a 1989, I believe, Dodge Daytona. And it was one that my uncle got for really cheap. I think he bought it for like $300 or something. It needed engine work and all that kind of stuff. And I think I ended up paying him, I don't know, it was less than $3,000, I think it was, maybe about $3,000. Sadly, less than a year later, I hit a deer with it and it got totaled. But it was a decent car. It was a good first car. It was a good first car. It had those flip-up lights, and they didn't work, so the lights stayed up. But I was able to pick the paint color. He had needed repainted, and I picked Patriot Blue. And it was a nice color, nice car, nice color. But that's all that's needed for a first-time driver, a young driver, because they're going to pay a bunch in auto insurance anyway, whether they're on parents' policy or their own policy. It's going to go up. And then for life insurance, shop around for the best possible deal. Use a broker that does business with multiple companies. And I'm not going to get into this too much. I do know that there's one particular financial guy who says this. He says, just do term life insurance. Just term life insurance. It's cheaper. There's all these different types of life insurance. You can get some where you invest money from your policy, or you can borrow against your policy. It's so expensive. It's so much more expensive than term. The only purpose for life insurance is life. The life of the one you're leaving the money to. That's the only purpose for life insurance. You can invest your money in a different way with the money you save getting, in my opinion,
You get a whole life
a term,
policy.
whole life.
As young as you are.
Oh yeah,
It's much better to get a term.
you get a
policy
term.
And then invest the difference.
Absolutely,
You
absolutely.
don't need a saving.
No need, don't, no,
And when you
absolutely.
get old, do you want to have the income, or do you want to have, you know,
Yeah.
all this insurance?
Yeah.
I don't even have insurance. life
So,
insurance.
but anyway, the term life insurance is a good way to go. Just be careful about life insurance, because there are a lot of different agents out there that will try to sell you this and sell you that. You got to get the most bang for your buck to do what you want it to accomplish, what you want to accomplish with it, based on your age and who you have as who you want to take care of with that money. For the husband, my reason for having life insurance is to make sure that I'm leaving something to my wife so that she can then afford to keep on paying the bills and living afterwards. It's my way of providing for her even after I pass on. All right, let me see if I can move through this. Use subscriptions wisely. We live in a more increasingly subscription-based consumer culture, where things that you used to just buy outright, now you get through subscription. The software that we used to use for designing bulletins and other literature and cards and stuff like that, you just can't even buy it outright anymore. You have to pay for the subscription. And it got to the point where this past year I said, actually it was just a few months ago, the term was going to be up in the beginning of September. I said, this is ridiculous paying this much for doing a bulletin every week, and once in a while doing a gospel tract. There's other ways to do this where we're not paying this kind of money as a church. And once again, need to make a change because there was just no need to spend that money on that monthly subscription for this particular software, this particular program. Same thing with entertainment. I mean, there's so many streaming services, and before you know, I mean, the cable has gotten so expensive, which I don't recommend having cable anyway. But the television services have gotten so expensive, and you get less for your money as far as quality is concerned. And but people are paying now for these streaming services, whether it's video like TV streaming or TV shows, movies, or even music streaming. So that adds up after a while too. So be careful about those. Use subscriptions wisely, whatever it might be. Some people do delivery services or online shopping. Make sure it's actually worth your while if you sign up for a subscription. Reevaluate everything periodically, like your communication, like phone service, cell phone service, electric supply, insurance, groceries, consumer goods. Just reevaluate. Just take a look at it. Take a look at it. It doesn't hurt. Take a look at it. All right, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the facts. Let's look at our situation, what we're doing here, and make a change. Cell phones especially. I want to focus on that for a moment, because if you've got a cell phone plan from 10 years ago, you're still paying the same plan from 10 years ago, you're probably paying way too much money. Because the cell phones plans of 10 years ago are not what they are now. Most everything has moved to, I shouldn't say most everything, but prepaid is a lot more common now than it was, which I believe is the way to go. I mean, the way the cell phone plans are set up right now, that's the way to go. There was a time when you would sign a 2-year contract and the price of the phone was included in your monthly payment. And then after 2 years, you could, do a different phone or whatever. That eventually got changed where they disconnected the price of the phone from the plan, which I think is a great thing, because then what I do is I buy most of the time. Now, right now I don't because of the service I have, but most of the time in the past, what I've tried to do is buy an unlocked phone that's not specific for one carrier. I try to get one that's specific for all the major carriers. You have to make sure you do find a phone, because there are some phones that are missing one of the carriers, depending on what kind of how it's designed, what it has in it. But I try to get one for all the major carriers, And so I buy it separately, and then I can change my plan whenever I want. If I find a different plan that's going to work for me, I buy prepaid, so I'm not stuck into a commitment of any sort. I just change it. Just this past and during this year, I had to, or I didn't have to. I reevaluated. I looked at this company. They changed their prepaid plans because prepaid plans do change every once in a while, even with the same companies. And so I looked at this again, and they changed their plans, and I said, "You mean I can get more data for $5 less a month? You better believe I'm doing that." So I signed up for that plan instead. And the reason they were offering that price was because they were doing a loyalty discount, and I'd already been with this company, so they were knocking a bunch of money off. And because I pay automatically every month, that knocked another $5 off. But reevaluating cell phone plans and that goes along with prepay, cell phone plans, auto insurance. If you can save the money and prepay for 6 months or a year for your auto insurance, you save a lot of money on that. And then be vigilant for fraud and scams. There's fraud on the rise. There's a gift card scam that's been going on. Apparently, it's been getting more and more common where people get a phone call and they'll say, well, your Apple account is locked, or your whatever account it is, Amazon, Apple. And so it's locked, and to be able to unlock this account, you need to go buy Apple gift cards. And people have done this, which boggles my mind. But they've gone out to the store buying literally $500 worth of gift cards, and they give it to that person. They call them back. They give that money. Or I don't know how they give it to them. They call them or whatever it is. And they're out that money because they made the purchase. They bought those gift cards. They can't come to their finance. I mean, we can empathize and we can say, I'm sorry that happened to you, but there's nothing that can be done on the bank's end because you made that purchase. You just got to go to the police, file a police report. And it's a very common scam now that those types of things are going on. There's also phishing scams, which you've probably seen in your email. If you have email, use email. Things that look like it comes from a particular company, but it's really not. And some of those are really deceptive, so you have to be careful of what you're actually getting in your email box, what you're clicking on. Make sure you check it out first. Check the address where it comes from. If it looks like it came from Amazon, but the address where it came from, you scroll up there, scroll over it, you can see oftentimes it has a different email address. You know it's a scam. It doesn't have anything to do with Amazon. I've gotten those for Microsoft, I think Amazon. I've gotten them for Chase Bank and different ones. And usually I have a suspicion when I see it, but they're pretty good. They're getting pretty good. And then putting money to work. We already talked about giving, but giving and saving. Plan for future expenses and save extra for emergencies. You know, it's no good to get out of debt if you don't have money also saved for emergencies, because then you end up right back in debt. So we need to save and pay off the debt. And of course, when you're first starting to pay off the debt, you need to really try to focus on that. But we should also be focusing on saving so that we don't get right back where we started. And then when you have saved a bit for emergencies, plan for future expenses, then you also can be investing. And the amount for everybody's different as far as, okay, what needs to go toward debt, what goes toward saving, what goes toward investing. That can all change. That can all be different. But the debt needs to really be top priority, but also saving needs to be a top priority. But we also want to, like I said, it's more enjoyable to do that with money. I love investing. I don't always like the results of investing, but I like investing. I'd rather be investing money than paying debts. Now, the most common types of investments are stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. Now, I'll tell you a mistake I made. Now, I opened my first online brokerage account shortly after my wife and I got married. It was 2008, or it was I think it was end of 2008. And I was one, I like looking at specific companies. And I'm going to invest in this company or in this company. And some of them I did pretty well on, but there were other ones, they were real stinkers. I mean, they didn't do well at all. So I don't know if I really made any money through the years. I'd like to think I did. I hope I did. But what I wish I would have done, and one particular financial guy says this is really, if I would have just started investing in mutual funds back in 2008, 2009, 2010, like right at the stock market tanking, and I would have been putting money into mutual funds. If you look at the mutual funds, those things go up except when there's a big stock downturn, then everything goes down at some point when you get into a bear market. But overall, the mutual funds have gone up. But when you're trying to invest in specific companies, you're putting more risk out there. With mutual funds, you're balancing it out a bit more. And there's also ETFs, exchange-traded funds. Things about mutual funds, you have to recognize they do have fees involved, so make sure and not all mutual funds are alike. Some of them don't perform very well, and then others that do pretty well. So it's do research, seek good advice, and then also it's best to ignore the day-to-day news about the stock market, because it's not about the day-to-day news. It's about sticking with a plan for the long term, just consistently investing. And there's a term called dollar cost averaging, I believe, where if you start investing and then you just habitually put money in over the period of time, it all averages out. The ups and downs average out, and then eventually it grows. That's the idea, at least. And I'm 100%, I know if I would have put that money into mutual funds instead of individual stocks, I'd have done much better, at least over that period of time. But I will say, and this is the end of this here, there's also CDs, but it's tough saving. It's tough putting your money to work right now, because in the sense of saving and investing to get some money in return, because of the way interest rates are. And that's the other thing. We ought to be educated on what the best decisions are. CD rates are just in the tank right now, unfortunately, and I don't know that that's going to change anytime soon, most likely. So more people then move from CDs, that type of thing, to the stocks, because those are greater potential of return, but it's also greater risk. And so we just need the Lord's wisdom. We need to seek the Lord. God, what do you want me to do with this money? Do you want me to give it? You want me to save it? You want me to invest it? And we need God's wisdom. I mean, it's God's wisdom is there for those types of decisions, and boy, do we greatly, greatly need that. And I want to end with a couple of verses here. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. But godliness with contentment is great gain, for he brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and raiment, let us be therewith content. So no matter what our financial situation is or ends up being throughout our lives, no matter how much money we have or don't have, godliness with contentment is great gain. We can't take it with us, but we can take the spiritual treasures, the spiritual riches with us. Those last for eternity. And that's what we should put God first, put the things of God first. It's just that managing our finances well helps us in doing more things for the Lord. So we don't have those burdens. We're not overwhelmed with those burdens. And then Matthew 6:33, but seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Ultimately, put your faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. Put your faith that God, place your faith in God that He will meet your needs. He's promised to meet our needs. One person said that in a financial seminar, he said, God said He'd provide every conceivable need, not every conceivable greed. And very true. Very true. So I wanted to end with those particular verses and recognizing, put the Lord first. Don't get caught up in the consumerism, the commercialism mindset. Let's live lives that are guided by the Word of God, guided by the Lord's wisdom in however we use our money. But it does alleviate a lot of stress when we get finances in order. It decreases anxiety. It can help relationships. Oftentimes it's a source of stress in homes and marriages and individual lives. And so we need God has this here for our taking, both the character aspect, the purpose aspect, and then some practical things, basic things we can learn and apply as we go along. Does anybody have any questions? Or maybe you had one, but you forgot it. Okay.
Well, we didn't touch on one thing.
What's that?
Something that make a big difference in your credit limit. When you're making a little over $1 million a year like I am,
Yeah.
you don't have anywhere near as much trouble getting minor credit.
Okay. Do you have some secret source of income we don't know about that is through underhanded sources? Or
No, I give it all away.
Oh, okay. The other thing is I should mention when it comes to investing is the issue of
He's looking at me like he's lying.
is the issue of gold. So some people are really on a gold bandwagon as far as investing in gold, silver and gold, and getting the hard metals, silver and gold. It's not a bad thing to have purchased some of that. Gold. I wouldn't be surprised in the next few years we could see gold shoot up quite a bit. Some of the things I read, as far as a person I read that really seems to know his stuff and has a good perspective on things, is looking for gold to continue rising long term. It has its ups and downs, but there are some people that put all their eggs in one basket, and they should not be putting their eggs in one basket. There are different ways in which to invest. Some people recommend 10% in gold, like hard metals, gold and silver, or precious metals. And some say maybe up to 20%, but not putting all your eggs in one basket. But what I look at gold and silver for is if you want to actually invest in real money as a protection against the fiat money, the fake money, the currency that we use today that's not backed by anything. And so that's why it is good to have something else and it might not be gold and silver. It could be assets like land. It could be some people invest in art. Just hard assets is another way of investment. Because the stock market, people can lose their shirts in the stock market. But I just will say, though, you just stay the course. There were some people, they bailed back in 2008, 2009. I worked with someone who said, oh, yeah, I'm just putting my money in CDs from now on. Like it's just too risky. Oh, they missed out. If they got out, you don't get out at the bottom of a downturn. I mean, that's not when you get out. And by the way, the advice is don't time the market. Don't try to time the market. You just try to make good individual decisions, but then invest habitually and just go forward. Any other questions? Maybe someone has a comment. Maybe something you've learned to practice in your life that's been helpful for managing money. No? All right.
Is there a danger of investing in mutual funds if you don't, they may not share your Christian philosophies? Or?
Well, that's up to, I guess, the individual soul liberty. Every person has to make that decision. Every Christian has to make that decision as to what you're willing to put your money into. I do think I've never not looked into this. There might be some more ethical or like Christian ones that Christians have put together that maybe there are better places to invest that you don't have that issue. But it really depends on. It kind of depends on your perspective because. There's a difference between putting money into a beer company and then a company that part of their business might have something you would disagree with, but that's not the whole of what their business is. It really depends on. But that's a good question. I mean, it's. Now, when you say a danger, what kind of danger? Are you talking about a spiritual danger or a financial danger?
Investing in alcohol or investing in supporting abortions?
Yeah. I mean, if I were, and that's the challenge with mutual funds, with individual stocks, you can control that a bit better. But that is a risk that is run because oftentimes you don't see the whole list of what they're investing in. And that definitely is something to consider when it comes to mutual funds, and there are ways to avoid that because there are a variety of different mutual funds. And oftentimes it is possible, I think, to see the whole list. I think in different somehow you can see the whole list. Usually they just show you the biggest holdings, but part of it depends on a lot of the most popular stocks today are the tech companies, and most corporations do not share our values as Christians. And that is the challenge with that. And I look and that's where that is why my hope and my reliance is not on investing in worldly things. I still think there are tools, those are tools we can use in certain ways. But our first and foremost focus of what we do with our money is let's put God first, and God will bless and God will provide. If we do if our conscience or our God, or that God is not allowing us, leading us, don't do this, then He's going to provide for us in some other way. And so that's a good subject, good thought you bring up there related to that. Because I'll be honest with you, I've recently, some of the recent investments I don't necessarily have a bunch of mutual funds myself, but through my work, I now have some more mutual funds. And I don't know the whole list of what they invest in. So who knows? Now, generally, if there is any money invested in it, in a company like that, it's probably a very minute sliver of that mutual fund. But that's a good thought. I had that thought because of one of my stocks was a cell phone company, or at least it was a telecom company, and that was their main business for a time, and then they got into the entertainment business. And I'm thinking, all right, do I keep investing in this? And part of the thinking is part of my thinking has gone also to, well, I don't know what my money is being used to fund. What is my money funding? Because it's hard to measure that. How do you know what aspect of their business your money is going toward? So those are some things that I have thought in the past. So that's something that you in your own heart and your own life need to decide and just pray about it, seek the Lord's direction on. And no, I would not be a proponent of, and there are companies I flat out avoid investing in. Absolutely, I don't care how popular it is, how profitable it is. I'm not investing in beer companies. I'm not investing in things that would go again. I'm not investing in cigarette companies and that type of thing. But the mutual funds, that's another matter where some of that money, even a small portion of it, could potentially be go toward that. So.
What about, I'm sorry.
Did you have any follow-up to that or anything? Okay.
Well, I was just wondering, what about these advertisements you see in Christian magazines where universities and colleges want you to donate so much and they'll guarantee an annuity every year or something like that, where you can build up for your retirement?
I am not 100% familiar with those. I do know that when there's ever an organization like that is pushing people to give money, it's because they want money.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of knowing exactly, is there a way to do the same thing without spending more money? Because if you've got to give to them in order to get something, well, how much are you losing in the long run? How much are you giving up? But I can't say from personal knowledge of that. I'm not 100% familiar with that type of arrangement.
These aren't small groups. I mean, they're universities.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Major
yeah.
Christian corporations.
I am not familiar with. You're talking about donating to them.
Well, not donating necessarily. Like an insurance policy where you would give them money, like every month or so for a year, and they would guarantee you over a period of time afterwards that they would pay it back with a little interest on a monthly basis.
Because they invested.
They invest. I would definitely look into the finer points of what that entails, because there's definitely something in it for them where they're now. If this is an annuity, if you're doing it through a Christian organization or university, where it's the same arrangement as if you got an annuity through some financial advisor, well, maybe you could go that direction. But I'll be honest with you, I am not familiar with that. So, but I would definitely be poring over the details, and I will try to I'll make a point of actually looking that up and see. Annuities is not one of my areas of great familiarity anyway. But good question. I'll try to remember to look that up. And but with any type of investment like that, I'll give you one example here to finish up here. Is there was a man who did financial seminars. He was on staff at a church and a Bible college. This is a Baptist church, Bible college. And he was going around the country, going to different churches, doing all these, and a lot of helpful information. But he ended up, what he was doing when he was traveling around was telling these pastors, I have an investment opportunity for your people, for you and your people. And this is like guaranteed return, like, it's just a lot of money in return. I mean, this is what you'll get, all the whole, for your investment. Well, what they were doing, it was number one, it wasn't actually properly set up with the regulators, with federal and state regulators. And because they were selling an investment product, but they were not doing it through the right channels. And it had to do with my understanding, a used car type of thing for no credit people, where they're selling these used cars and for exorbitant interest rates. And so then that money, people invest in that and they get part of the cut for that. Well, what it turned out was they were taking money from other people. It started to go under. There's this fund, I don't know if it was a type of mutual, but whatever it was, but it started going under, and so he's still going around, they're still getting this money from people, still telling people about this investment, but they're taking that money to have to pay the returns to the other people. And eventually, they got found out, and he went to, as far as I know, he went to jail. This is a guy who was doing these financial seminars. A lot of good information, a lot of sound, but yet still, number one, I wouldn't invest in something like that anyway, where you're charging exorbitant amounts of interest to people with no or low credit, no or bad credit. I don't think that's, personally, I don't necessarily think that's an ethical business to get into when it comes to that extreme usury type of thing. But to present it as and they violated the most basic investment principle, is not putting all your eggs in one basket. And there were people who literally lost everything, all of their investments, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, Christians in churches. And so the whole point of that is to always, no matter how trusted the person is, this person was very trusted, and when it comes to how we use our money, be knowledgeable how we use our money, what we're investing in, make sure we know the details, make sure we're making informed decisions and following good principles, sound principles, and maybe getting some other advice, financial advice, because there's a lot of different advice you can get out there. And that one went south in a hurry, unfortunately. It was not good. So a lot of people lost everything. And I say that, I think maybe partially I say that because of, there are a lot of people out there who they're just looking to make money, especially with some of these investment opportunities like those annuity type things. Those are, I'd be looking at the details of that type of thing, and not making sure that it's all above board, and that there's not a way to do the same thing in a different way that doesn't involve that extra layer of that organization. But any others? I know we went a bit longer tonight, but I thought about cutting it off. I thought, no, we're not going to have enough for next week, so wanted to just get it done. So, but good questions, good questions. I'm going to be looking at that mutual fund thing more now too. So it's a good thought.
Yeah, at least you have a choice that way, or can have a choice. It's not like taxes where your money gets the...
You don't know where your tax money goes. Our tax money goes to, but with investments we do have the choice. Yeah. And so, but the main thing is to not look at anything as some get rich quick. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. They that make haste to be rich fall into a snare. And so anything we do with our money, any way we invest it, save it, should not be with the expectation of getting it rich. I didn't mention penny stocks, but some people do penny stocks with the expectation, boy, this is going to just shoot up, and it's very speculative, very risky. Some people make out well on it, and that to me is more akin to gambling because you're not investing in an actual solid company that has at least a track record. You might still lose money, but it's not so much akin to gambling. You're investing. But sometimes certain penny stocks are more like gambling with the expectation or the hope of getting rich quick. So, all right. That might have been the one thing I forgot as part of this series was gambling. How could I do that? I don't know. Don't play the lottery and don't gamble. And period. That's my addressing that in this series. Maybe I did mention it in one of the, now that I think about it, I might have mentioned that. I think I might have mentioned in regard to getting rich quick. Maybe they make haste to be rich fall into a snare. It's just a waste of money. There's better ways to spend money. All right, let's pray and we'll be dismissed with that.